Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Senator Harry Reid is considering a vote on repealing the so-called Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy regarding open homosexuality in the military. Hi, I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and dean of Liberty University School of Law. Joining me is Matt Barber, director of cultural affairs for Liberty Counsel and associate dean for the law school. Matt, this is an important issue, and the lame duck session is no place to have this pushed through Congress. We have significant issues that Congress needs to be focusing on in the next couple of weeks, and unfortunately, Senator Harry Reid is putting this thing front and center. He's wanting to repeal a federal law that has an eligibility criteria list. Not just homosexuality, but there's other things as well with regards to eligibility to be able to serve in the military. Open homosexuality is one of those criteria that makes you ineligible. Now, the so-called Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy is what President Bill Clinton initiated. It's a policy, it's executive policy, not a statute. And it simply says, well, if you don't tell us, we're not going to ask you about your homosexuality. Harry Reid wants to repeal the underlying law and allow homosexuality into the armed services. That, I think, has a significant impact on military readiness.
Yeah, as you know, Matt, I served 12 years in the Army National Guard. This is an issue that hits close to home for me. And I can tell you this, there's something called forced intimacy. And that's what we see a situation with the in the military. You're in a situation where you have forced intimacy. Men are required to share very tight quarters, bunking facilities right next to one another, open showering facilities, and so forth. We have, as you point out, Harry Reid and liberals in Congress and the radical homosexual activist movement pushing to get this through this lame duck Congress because they fear that if they don't get this repeal done now, it may not ever get done, or certainly for several years with Republicans taking over Congress. Well, they've timed a survey, a very flawed survey, a survey that doesn't even ask the probing question, should Don't Ask, Don't Tell be repealed? Instead, it was conducted in an effort to figure out how to best repeal. So that the decision had already been made by Admiral Mullen, by the Obama administration, despite the fact that every one of the commanders of all of the armed services branches, General James Amos for the Marines, for one, for instance, are adamantly opposed to this, Amos being the most vocal in opposition to this. They say that this will disrupt unit cohesion and troop morale, and now with things heating up in North Korea, South Korea, around the world, Iraq and Afghanistan, this is dangerous. This is playing doing social experimentation with national security. This is bad news.
It really is. Let's take a prime example of why this policy in place is a good one, and why it shouldn't be repealed. Let's look at the WikiLeaks situation, yes. For example. President Bill Clinton, back in 1995, signed an executive order removing sexual orientation as a grounds for denying someone a security clearance. Had that policy never been revoked, the homosexual soldier Bradley Manning would never have had access to our national secrets and would not be able to leak them to the WikiLeaks founder. According to news reports, Manning decided to turn traitor after a fight with his boyfriend, which somehow motivated him to send hundreds of thousands of confidential documents to WikiLeaks leader Julian Assange, who's been alleged also by some to be gay. But at any rate, if you go back and look at this, go back to the reports of the 1950s when a series of Senate committees reports concluded that, quote, moral perverts are bad national security risk because of their susceptibility to blackmail, close quote, and that homosexuals are, quote, vulnerable to interrogation by a skilled questioner, close quote, due to emotional instability or moral weakness. And that comes from the Journal of Public Administration Research and Theory, October 1, 2001. So this is not some ancient document, but it looks back at what happened in the 1950s with regards to why homosexuality was an automatic excluder for someone in a national security position.
Well, yeah, no, the WikiLeaks issue, which has, talk about endangering national security, world security. I mean, the world is up in arms over this thing. And those who are leaking this, many of them have said that they seek chaos here, worldwide chaos. That's the motive behind this. Bradley Manning, as you mentioned, who has turned over a bunch of this information, a soldier in the armed services, an out homosexual. This is the perfect, this is Exhibit A as to why you don't experiment socially, use the military as a petri dish for radical social experimentation. He was rebelling against and protesting the don't ask, don't tell policy. So he put national security on the chopping block in order to push his own selfish agenda, which is to repeal Section 654, Title 10, which is the law that prohibits homosexual behavior in the ranks of the armed services.
Yeah, and look what it's done. I mean, it's had ripple effects around the country. This 19-year-old, I believe he's 19-year-old, private first class, homosexual who should have been excluded from the military had they enforced the law, and should have been excluded from having any kind of access to national security. We'd have never been in this situation had the law been enforced. But because he's homosexual, he's in the military, he allegedly breaks up with a boyfriend, and decides that as he's looking at some of these information from the United States, security information, that he's upset with the military and with the policies of the military, and decides to take revenge, and he gives all this information to individuals, putting people and countries at risk.
Now, does this mean that every person who self-identifies as homosexual is a national security risk? No, not necessarily, but this shows specifically that why, and this highlights why we have the policy in place that seeks to keep sexual deviancy out of the ranks of the armed services. Now, Matt, let me ask you this. Liberty Counsel is part of the Freedom Federation. It's a group of 40-plus organizations. Tell everyone, if you would, a little bit about that. And we have signed on to a letter with the Freedom Federation to the United States senators, asking them to keep in place Section 654, Title 10 of the USC, and not to repeal the so-called don't ask, don't tell, in order to ensure national security.
That's right. The Freedom Federation is a federation of some of the largest multiracial, multi-ethnic, and multi-generational faith-based and policy organizations and leaders in the country, representing approximately 40 million constituents combined. And we have joined together as part of the Federation. Liberty Counsel was the impetus to start the Federation, but this Federation is a federation of independent autonomous organizations. Collectively, we're joining together in a letter to send to the senators to make sure that they know that these leaders and these organizations are opposed to the repeal of the federal law that bans open homosexuality in the military. We want to send a message loud and clear that this is not the time to repeal this law, to put our men and women in harm's way. Also, we know from surveys that if this law were to be repealed, people would leave the military or not join the military at a time where we're facing wars in Afghanistan and Pakistan, or uprisings in Pakistan and Iraq, and then now in North Korea. Now's not the time to weaken our military.
Well, we know through some leaks, even with the survey that's coming out that was a push poll really to try to get the policy repealed, we know that this would cause complete disarray in the ranks of the Marine Corps. The survey you mentioned, the Military Times poll, found that when asked the question that needs to be asked, should Don't Ask, Don't Tell be repealed, and if it is, what will you do? 10% of those currently serving in the armed services said they would get out. Another 14% said they would consider getting out. That we're looking at up to a 24% exodus in the armed services, Matt. That would be devastating to the national security. Could even open up a draft.
No question about it. Right now, we need to strengthen our military, not weaken it. We shouldn't use our military as a vehicle for social re-engineering and pushing the radical homosexual agenda, and certainly not during a lame duck session when they don't have the opportunity to thoroughly vet this issue. This ought to be pushed into 2011 at a minimum, but even then it shouldn't be repealed. But we want to make sure that these members of the Senate have a message loud and clear. Don't repeal this federal law. For more information, go to Liberty Counsel's website at lc.org. You can sign up for the Liberty Grassroots Action email right there on the webpage, because if you sign up for that, you can also be a part of a petition drive that we're submitting to members of the Senate. We are literally submitting tens and tens of thousands of petitions on this issue, urging the members of the Senate not to repeal this critically important law. The WikiLeaks example is Exhibit A as to why you don't want to repeal this. Go to Liberty Counsel's website at lc.org for more information.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.